academicians and professionals should be empowered to continue their efforts and growth in the field of DRR. In connection to this topic, yesterday also we had our first webinar on bridging the gap between research and practice for enhancing disaster resilience. During the webinar, we had opportunity to hear from Professor Rajiv Shah, Kyo University, Major General M.K. Bindal, Executive Director, NIDM, Professor Chandan, Ghosh, Dr. Ranit Chatterjee, and Ms. Aparna Tandon, who had provided their perspective about research, practical and implementation in the field of DRR. Professor Shah highlighted the root causes of gaps between research and practice by showing an interesting analysis. He indicated that considering the numbers of disasters in India, the numbers of researchers are lesser than any developed countries like Japan, USA, and Europe. Also, the quality of publications in DRR need improvement. We also brought out the fact that mostly researches are happening in the area of engineering and science, and very less emphasis have been given to the topics related to governance, economic losses, and local issues. The issues was discussed in length by the panelists also, and it was concluded that there is a need to have a collective approach to reduce the gap between research and practice. Towards the end of the webinar, we had a vibrant discussion on how to engage and promote the youth of the country towards building their career in DRR. It was brought out that though we have challenges in front of us, but at the same time, we have several opportunities such as CDRI fellowships, IRDR Young Scientist Program, and young professional networks like CRRP and UInspire for strengthening the capacities of young professionals and scientists in various fields like science, technology, and resilience. Yesterday, we could not have last presentation by Mr. Aslam Parvez, Deputy Executive Director, ADPC, due to the paucity of time and some mismanagement. However, today, again, we have an opportunity to have him here to address the participants. In continuation to the yesterday's discussion, today we will focus on how to bridge the gap between research and practice and how to empower young researchers and professionals to take up DRM as a career. We would listen to the first-hand experiences and reflections from the professional of the field. Now, with the permission of the chair, I would like to invite Professor Chandan Ghosh, our keynote speaker for today, to present his remarks. Professor Ghosh has more than 31 years of experience in research, teaching, and guidance. Apart from his NIDM, he has been attached to IITs for imparting education in engineering-based disaster risk mitigation solutions. He has various publications, chapters, and books. He is well known for his knowledge, and I don't think he needs much introduction on the experiments and applied solutions he comes up in his presentations. So I welcome you, sir, and may I request you to kindly give your address. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Garima. Can I have the share button? Just 5 minutes I want to say. Whatever I want to say, yes. That is through some slides.
Yes, so Shweta, please.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Okay. Just only I wanted to say that yesterday I could present about the early warning devices. If we buy it and keep it in our house, it's not enough. We have to have the background system to connect so that whenever earthquake occurs, that will give the really verified, codified, decided, and as per protocol, the public warning can be generated. And then I showed few of the slides that where we can bring the entire world, the sustainable development that what we have been talking about. It is mentioned, or we know and have been the entire more than 100 countries, they have been working and with various kinds of, vegetation growth, other deforestation we are sure familiar with. Afforestation part, yes, we are having some kind of attitudinal problem, lackluster, lack desire problem, but at the same time, the research and technology, and then experimentation, and then checking or with some of the various kind of vegetation establishments across the world, especially that how seeds are growing, agricultural field, and then where they are growing. So there are several such experiments are being done. And based on that, as I have shown yesterday, that grass can be grown on the hill area to cover this, and then we can have carbon sequestration there itself, and proper methodology of calculating that how much sequestration has occurred. These are all known in our world of global ecology and environment. So if I take only one variety of grass, so I would like to focus on that harvesting rainwater. It creates an artificial, not artificial, natural porosity of taking water through the soil, which is otherwise covered with silt, like in the river bed. But if we put vertical grass, which remain, because in our river, perennial, not perennial river, even perennial river also, like Ganga, Yamuna, if we say that hardly they are having any water flowing in off season. But these vertical grass, if we put on the river bed, they help soil porosity, increasing the soil porosity naturally, which otherwise we go for dredging the river, and there are so many water. We dredging the canal or river that we use lots of machinery. But this is one kind of nature's given gift to mankind to increase the porosity, so that the aquifer that is there, they can be recharged naturally by, or rather we can say, harvesting rainwater on the ground, on the riverbed, or in our area. So there are many things are forwarded. Where protect infrastructure, drainage system protections, then protect coastlines, barrier, they can grow minus 15 degree to 50 degree Celsius, pH value 3 to 11, and it can grow anywhere. So in that way, and any kind of soil, even the soil that which is completely non-productive, then that soil they rejuvenate and they make their life, they can again put life to that soil for crops and other things. And protect flood-prone area, slows down the overland flows, and then protect farmland, sequester carbon, as I said. You can see a lot of things over here. Facilitate reforestation and plantation establishment. Even there are many places where forest fire has burned everything. Whichever area that whatever grass is there, they are growing on their own, because their roots are going very deep and they grow on their own without any watering or anything naturally, faster than any other thing. Otherwise, those in the forest fire, they have to wait till next rainy season comes. Liquid waste, there is a huge application on this. So if a grass which is naturally available, if our young professional, young or we together take hand and work together on the one particular variety of grass, which is vetiver, is a Tamil name, and it is originated in India for thousands of years. And if we promote this one, and also oil, if we make the oil, which is very, very enriched property for our health, as well as most of the even cosmetics or other like in France, perfumery industry, their base material is vetiver oil. So some of the other applications where we spend millions and millions of rupee or dollar in stabilizing our slope, just simply that is made being possible by vetiver grass only. See, but unfortunately, these are not being accepted by the professional as of now in our country. So Thailand is the Thailand and China or Indonesia, Vietnam, their expressway, Ho Chi Minh Expressway, they have introduced these things in this manner and got or reaping the benefit. Like before and after, how it is being coming up. So we must take some stride over there. Not all vetiver grass will go in all. So we have the experiment. We have to go for the experiment like this. So 4 varieties are there. one is washed away, others is going. That way we have to do the experiment. So advantage and other things are also there, which you can see worst literature available. And then disadvantages means it is difficult to plant or water vegetation very high or steep slope, whatever requires protection from livestock during establishment phase. Otherwise, it has got the smell, which is not to be used as not liked by the as a fodder. So just only briefly, I want to say that when Manrega worker in the country, they are being used, which we can say they get 100 days of work. And laborers employed under Manrega in this, and same thing is being converted to such a wonderful, erosion is being stopped. So in our country only, and there are several efforts being done, but they are not properly documented. So whatever I want to wish that through this seminar or interaction with CRRP, I would say that let us carry forward the mission of greening. Once this is being done, then we can change whatever projections being made by AR6 of IPCC or whatever STARK or whatever comments that we are making. We can reverse that. We can come back to our normal way of living before industry era. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your kind guidance towards the topic and sharing your research experience of vetiver grass, which could be brought to the practice and could be the reality. Thank you very much, sir. We look forward to come up with some concrete roadmap on how to involve young and young generation in DRM. Now I hand over to Mr. Rupal Kanji from CRRP to take up further proceedings. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Rupal.
Thank you, Dr. Agrawal. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is keeping well in these difficult times. First of all, on behalf of the Confederation of Risk Reduction Professionals, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the National Institute of Disaster Management for agreeing to collaborate with CRRP and host a series of webinars on this very, very pertinent issue. Before we move on to the part of the program where I invite our esteemed guest speakers and where we learn from the reflections of our panelists, I would like to briefly introduce CRRP. And I believe I am immensely fortunate to be doing so amidst people who have played a key role in shaping CRRP the way it is now. Members of CRRP who would be our speakers in the next sessions, and one of our most supportive mentor, Mr. Aslam Parvez. We often hear about councils and federations of established fields like architecture, civil engineering, etc. But have you ever heard of such a body for disaster management professionals? Well, it becomes all the more difficult when the field we are talking about is truly transdisciplinary in nature, with different people working in different phases of disaster risk management, coming from extremely diverse backgrounds and walks of life. In around 2019, after having spent a considerable amount of time in this field of study, I did have a few observations of my own, and I was lucky enough to come across few others like-minded professionals who shared the same stream of thought. We observed that youth and young professionals stand disillusioned about the field. To most, it still was and is managing disasters and not managing disaster risks. To those who dared to venture in this field, remained disenchanted in terms of career prospects. Do I go about pursuing higher studies in the same field, or do I go back to my parent field? Do I take up a not so well-paying job because I'm a fresher? Questions like these haunt professionals in this field even today. We also observed that there are only a few universities in India offering postgraduate courses in this field, and mostly they kept themselves limited to their realms, which was truly disturbing, as we strongly believed, and even now we believe that this field needs all hands on deck. For those of us who were fortunate enough to be admitted into the established mechanism of disaster risk management, either in the government or the non-government sector, we felt a strong disconnect between research and practice, and a mutual disrespect too. Decision makers disregarding the efficacy of researchers, and researchers unable to push through their voices and concerns. The abstractions was and is still real. Documents like the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, agendas like Honorable Prime Minister's 10 points, repeatedly emphasized on research and its translation. It reiterates the need of empowering youth and young professionals beyond their role in disaster response. But alas, being young professionals ourselves, we wanted to disrupt this very status quo. Being avid learners ourselves, we learn from what's going around in the world. And we admired what the youth and young professionals in Indonesia did with support from UNESCO Jakarta. We wanted to contextualize the effort to make a real difference. We wanted to make a platform not for the sake of it, but we wanted to make a platform so that we could address the challenges and help youth and young professionals express their opinions and voices. Through multiple multi-city consultations, we laid the foundation of CRRP, which eventually became part of the global movement of youth and young professionals in disaster risk reduction, which is known as U-Inspire Alliance, which is supported by UNESCO as well as the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. As of now, CRRP has more than 150 voluntary members with a dedicated team of around 25 members who work in 8 thematic working groups. We try to keep ourselves abreast of the latest developments in the field, and that's reflected in our working group themes. From citizen science and risk communication to entrepreneurship in DRR or climate change adaptation and mitigation, and even we do talk about systemic risk. We indulge ourselves in research as well as practice, from ideating and assisting in development of tools like COVID-19 Monitor to writing articles and blogs, from developing visualizations and video blogs to projects on community-based disaster risk management. I feel immensely proud to report that each of our ventures, be it the comical documentation and depiction of stories of resilience from the remote land of Assam to our lucid webinars like Chai Pe Charcha, each time we have been able to showcase that youth and young professionals have the potential to do things very, very differently. While the world is still battling the different variants of the novel coronavirus and extreme events of hydrometeorological hazards are increasing phenomenally, undoubtedly because of us, as is being reported by the assessment report, the 6th assessment report, CRRP felt that it would be fitting to collaborate with the premier and most esteemed institute in this field, the National Institute of Disaster Management, and initiate a discussion on the issues that revolves around youth and young professionals, research, practice, career, etc. There's no doubt that we need more and more trained professionals in this field. And what better way to motivate and inspire youth and young professionals by letting them learn from expert professionals from the field who carry with them the treasure of experience, knowledge, and whatnot. So without any further ado, let me invite our first guest, our mentor for his special address, Mr. Aslam Pervez. Aslam sir is the Deputy Executive Director at the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center in Thailand. He joined ADPC in 2005 and has more than 20 years of management level work on economic analysis, sustainable development, environment, disaster risk reduction, and climate resilience. He has substantive fieldwork experience from more than 15 countries with national and subnational work program development and implementation. Sir holds a master's degree in statistics with training on disaster risk management. Prior to joining ADPC, he has worked with the United Nations Development Program, the World Wildlife Fund, and the Institute of Economic Growth in India. So we can all guess that we have a lot to learn from his experiences and from his words of wisdom. Sir, the virtual floor is yours. Thank you for joining us today. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ripple. Such a wide introduction, but I was moved by the passionate introduction of CRRP. Let me also then start with some of those customary things. So first of all, thank you very much, Dr. Chandan Ghosh, to be here. Both of us worked for almost like 16 years that I know you. And of course, Garima, you are very dear to me. We both started almost about the same time in India. But here on the CRRP, and I must say that I really have a special heart for CRRP, not only because that the people here from Animesh to Ripple to Sumer to everybody that I know or I have worked is precisely that what we actually have been looking for in India, let's say post 2015, is something like this to happen. When I started my career, or maybe Garima, if you remember, we were just like, coming to the office and going back, we really did not had a feeling of risk reduction professionals. We were just an implied here and there. So I'm really, really very delighted today to see this thing coming up. I think if I have to summarize a couple of things now, from yesterday's to today, the answer lies on the topic of today. We talked about the gap, bridging the gap between research and practice. And I think CRRP very carefully put the second day's topic, and which is actually the answer, empower. And that's actually the full stop. Once you empower, I think you will bridge the gap between research and practice. And most of the thing which we talked yesterday, if you remember, that was exactly the problem that while we recognize, while we understand, we really don't empower. We just hire people for doing the work, but we really don't empower for a systematic change in how research can be taken into practice. I fully, and all of us are aware, and my colleagues, all the participants, that those who has joined, I know that they are the volunteers of CRRP and other people who are associated with NIDM. One thing I also would like to caution here, that when we are talking about research, we are not limiting to academics. I do not know the exact Webster dictionary's meaning about research, but I think what we are talking, particularly under the platform of CRRP, is that a number of things that actually are being produced to help better decision making based on evidence-based system. And I just heard what so passionately Professor Chandan Ghosh brought it. It is not limited to university. It is not limited to few fellowships. It's all about how the practicalities are being used. And if you have seen over the last couple of years, and let's forget last couple of years, just 2020 onwards, the Corona-19, this whole pandemic phase taught us that if you would not do good practice, we would remain at the mercy of the negative impacts of different type of disaster that we face. So with this, I mean, I think Ripul, you already gave a big introduction about me. I'm not that big person. I'm simply a practitioner. And I started my career in 1993, 1994 from a planning commission researcher. But over the period of time, whatever I have learned, I'm still feel myself as a practitioner who utilizes the services and the tools of the research community, all of you there, that you produce, and take them to the communities or the government. And at ADPC, as you most of you know, that since 1996, we have been trying to ensure that the capacity of the region is enhanced and upgraded in dealing with consequences of the disaster and climate change. For the last 35 years in ADPC, the approach has been disaster risk reduction through practical solutions by utilizing science-based information, strengthening governance system for effective risk management at all levels, and by improving grounded application for risk reduction measures in development. Yesterday, we already heard, and we are fully aware that research-based knowledge on disaster risk is well developed, and number of iterative examples has been given. Also, related technologies has been around for several decades already. But despite the availability and accessibility of the knowledge, there is still a gap between research and practice, between policies and concrete DRR outcomes. The experiences of many countries, particularly that I have worked, would show that researchers, and the one that we are talking today, I'm not really undermining all other researchers, it said that the researchers must look beyond the conventional criteria of accuracy, credibility of scientific and research organization, or various types of knowledge that are valid on their own right. What I believe at this moment for research to be more practical is on this SAS system, which is what we call is scalability, applicability, and sustainability. If we look at that one, our research would always be converting into the real solutions. Also, the framework of the dialogue that we generally have between different stakeholders, we must utilize an adaptive management approach where relationship between knowledge actors, such as researchers, are characterized by pluralism. That means multiple voices where everyone's views are equally valid, and is said to be transactive, where cross-pollination and hybrid of ideas occur in organizations with group mind or memory systems that are more complex and potentially more effective than the sum of its part. It's very difficult at this moment to establish, particularly in the context of India, that how much this pluralism is still being allowed and how much the views of each other are being validated. Nonetheless, I think the way people deal with the threat of disaster, as we all know, including the use of science and technology, is fundamentally depend on how we perceive or how we see disaster and risk. There are many different conceptual framings of disaster problem, which has often led to confusion, cross purposes, and disagreement. For example, the rich and the poor experience disaster differently, and disaster risk will be viewed very differently, for example, by a land developer or a finance ministry official or an emergency manager or a hazard scientist, a community leader or a villager. For CRRP, I would like them to look at these particular variety of people and try to find out what research to practice actually should mean. Long ago, and particularly the time when perhaps 30, 35 years ago, when Professor Chandan Ghosh must have been researching, was always thought research as an objective truth, exclusive to scientists and independent from the domain of policy and practice. Another conception at that time was that research only had one-way interaction with policymakers, wherein research only dictates which policies are to be formulated. But over the years, as we have seen, science and research has become more honest with itself, acknowledging that it also needed to deal with uncertainties. And we saw 2020 that between science practice, between the WHO guidelines and the Disaster Management Act of India, there has been a lot going between the science and the policymakers. Currently, what we see, policymakers are becoming more literate in science and research as more and more public policy issues call for research-based solutions. Therefore, interactions between policymakers and researchers are increasingly seen to be complex and nonlinear, and as opposed to early conceptions. While the rift could be real both in theory and in practice, good news is that, and we heard from Rika yesterday, that there are good examples that illustrate how collaboration among scientists, policymakers, and local communities can deliver better. And this is where I see a great potential between an organization, an NIDM, mandated to not only create capacity, but also to infiltrate capacity to enhance disaster resilience. And then these, you call it young professionals, but I see only the confederations of DRR professionals, because none of them that I see in front of me are called young. They really have spent number of years. I mean, I know Animesh very well. I know Sumed, Drupal, and all others. They have put a number of years working very hard to come and here look that, you know, how best DRR policies in India can better engage scientific and technological experts and ensure that relevant learning is appropriately integrated within strategies, policies, and progresses. I only wish this kind of dialogues, particularly with CRRP as well as with NIDM, continuously going on. I'm really sure that this partnership is very, very genuine and natural. We have people on the side of NIDM very passionate. I mean, you see only two here, but I think I more or less, when now I see for the last 2.5 years, I see a tremendous change in terms of the thought process and the approach. And that makes the ground for CRRP completely fertile to grow. For CRRP, yes, you have always, let's say, referred yourself from the experiment of UNSPIRE. I have been involved in UNSPIRE as well, but CRRP, you are going to perform in India, and if you perform in India, you are actually covering 1/3 of the requirement of the world. So you have to be much, much higher than UNSPIRE, I must tell you. Now, to do that, I know that UNSPIRE has a backing of institution. They have a very good mentor in terms of the UN agencies. This is here, we in CRRP should think what we should do better. And there are various models. The other day only, I was just watching, and without my allegiance to any kind of thought process in India, I just found a couple of startup from news, laundry, or even I saw unscripted news or somebody, but I have no association. I found that now they're asking that if you want to watch my news, just pay. I would like to see CRRP very soon to come up with a model through which we generate our very small little resources, so that we don't need to really strive or seek for funding of a larger order. At ADPC, we are very keen. I think some discussion, but as you know that our prime target most of the time has been the government. But for platforms like CRRP, I assure you that anything that you would like us to support, certainly we would do it through an NIDM and NDMA most of the time, but not by creating another level of bureaucracy. But I can assure you that for a number of things that you have planned, ADPC will be one of your supporters. And at times, if we get funding, we certainly would also support with that funding. The last point is about empowering and empowerment. I have seen the change, and I have seen the change not because that we as a senior professionals or whatever you call it, because I am termed as a mentor, that I have provided you the opportunity to grow. It is only because of those professionals that they themselves has found their own niche area. So the empowerment is within. I am fully 100% sure that CRRP would come up, and CRRP would live to its expectation that we all have. And you have very good volunteers, you have a number of people working with you, but at the same time, you need funds, you need money to get going, to invest in a number of things. Even if you want to do a chai pe charcha, you need tea bags and sugar and milk, and then of course a coffee table. You can't do it all the time online, correct? So to do that, let's find it out what is the best way. I'm not asking you to become another company, but for CRRP, we really need a model that actually will work for the next 10 years, at least until the 2030 goals, but beyond. So why not we target 2050? And I personally, as a mentor, I'm always available with you. And as I again end, that I am not really a person who sits idle. I do my own part. So feel free to contact me anytime. And of course, with the association with NIDM, I must thank again Dr. Chandan Ghosh, and also seek his guidance and leadership for CRRP. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for those kind and enlightening words. It is really so heartening to listen to you and kind of echo our feelings and our words, and also leave us with a lot of thought that how we need to strategize forward. And when you said that empowerment is within, we actually feel it. because we have strived a lot as individual professionals, all those speakers who will be speaking now. And of course, we know how it is, and we have still come together to do a greater good. We completely understand when you say that our responsibility is bigger. We need to perform. We need to, kind of rise up to the challenge and be better than you inspire. We understand that, and we promise you that we will definitely do our best. And we have taken note of all your points when you said that we have to take research to the field. We have to understand the perspective and perception, which would probably define the pathway of how to take research to the field. So thank you so much for those enlightening words, sir. And we could not thank you enough for joining us today and telling us how it has been and how we can take this forward. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Moving on with our program, I would like to invite our moderator for the day. And she has been the member of CRRP for a pretty long time. And I would like to introduce her now. So she's Rupa. I hope she is now online. And she's a member of CRRP India, as I already said. And she is currently pursuing her PhD research that focuses on the evolution of disaster management policies in India from the Johannes Gutenberg University of Mainz in Germany. She was a recipient of the Commonwealth Shared Scholarship of 2017 and 18 to pursue her second post-graduation studies, MSc Risk, from the Department of Geography at Durham University. In 2013, she completed her first post-graduation in environment management from Forest Research Institute in India. Following that, she worked in biodiversity informatics as a senior project associate for more than a year in Wildlife Institute of India, before joining the newly built UNESCO Category 2 Center for Natural World Heritage Site Training and Management for the Asia-Pacific region as a World Heritage Assistant. She also worked at a not-for-profit international NGO named CDP, which is Carbon Disclosure Project in India. So welcome, Rupa. The floor is yours. You are the moderator. Over to you.
So much, Ripor, and good morning to all the panelists and participants. After such an enlightening start of the day, now we move to the second part of our webinar. So we have two sessions coming up next, where disaster management professionals and researchers will share their own experiences. So for the first session, titled Pursuing Practice in Disaster Risk Management, Experiences and Reflections,
I think there is some issues with the voice. The voice is...
Can you hear me?
The volume is really low.
Okay. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Little bit, yes.
Okay. So thank you. Thank you, Dr. Agrawal. So for the first session titled Pursuing Practice in Disaster Risk Management, Experience and Reflections, I would like to invite our speaker, Mr. Animesh Prakash. Mr. Prakash is a humanitarian sector professional with a specialization in climate change adaptation, disaster risk reduction, and humanitarian response. He has 11 years of work experience in the areas of partnership management, high impact program delivery, innovation, and influencing. He is currently working with United Nations World Food Programme as Program Policy Officer for DRM and Climate Change Adaptation, and has held positions in disaster reduction at Oxfam and UNDP in the past. Animesh has worked extensively on sectors including transboundary water governance, emergency food security and vulnerable livelihoods, water sanitation and hygiene, and early warning. He has led many multi-partner development projects in India and regional projects in South Asia. Some of his technical innovations in development and humanitarian programming sites has received recognition at platforms including UNCOHA, UNSG, MIT, Climate Collab, Ambiliant Awards, South Asia, Spindle, and Pathos and Dutch Coalition of Humanitarian Innovation. And he holds a degree in disaster management and human rights law. So over to you, Mr. Animesh.
Thank you, Rupa. And thanks to CRRP for providing us this platform and opportunity to talk. Allow me to share my screen. I hope I'm clearly audible to everyone.
Yes, definitely you are audible, sir.
And you can see my screen as well.
Sure.
Yeah, so I was told to share personal experiences from my field, and I feel that this is immensely difficult task to talk about personal experiences, considering the fact that I don't know how relevant it would be to a mixed group like this. But definitely this talk and this presentation is targeted towards young practitioners and the students who have joined us today. And I hope that there will be some messages which can be taken away from this presentation. So about me personally, my decision to join disaster management started after I completed my degree in geography honors. I did a human rights law, and I was slightly inclined towards urban development and disaster management, but opted for disaster management and got an opportunity to join TISS there. My first class and the first lesson in the first class from Dr. Navjeet Roy. He told that a doctor can save probably 5-10 lives in his career, but a good disaster management professional can save millions of lives, and that has always been a motivating factor throughout my journey and my work. That brings me to the thought that the work which we are doing is quite significant in the field and in terms of saving lives and livelihoods. So I started my work with UNDP. I was based with district administration in Faridabad, and so basically I have around 3-4 case studies to share, and I thought that probably it would be important for young professionals to take certain key messages which can be important in their professional journey. And the message which I want to convey through my talk is about the importance of internal influencing and finding an opportunity in crisis. So through these case studies from my personal experiences, I want to share that there can be certain pathways which can be drawn even in a situation where you don't find any hope. So this was my first job, and we were trying to kind of advocate for building safety in Faridabad. Of course, when we float the proposition to the team and the superiors, there were slight reluctance about how are we going to pursue it. This can be an ambitious goal or target, and then this thing went to the background, and further we had to focus on other things. While working with UNDP in the district administration, particularly finding funds and resources in district administration in the department where I was stationed was also slightly difficult. And I was fortunate that these constraints and limitations were clearly spelled out to me. And I was told that if I can find a way out amidst these limitations, it would be really good. So we started, working towards a strategy of finding pooled resources, and that forced us to look into the resources which are available with different departments and all, and we tried to plan our work around it. So during that, I'm talking about year 2012, and during that time, NDRF was starting with its initiative called FAMEX. We had the Industrial Safety and Health Department who had their mandate of conducting off-site and on-site emergency plans. And similarly, civil defense and other departments also came with their own resources and all. So this through this strategy, we tried to bring different stakeholders together and build this program where we start working on industrial safety and other components. The pictures you see is an exercise which we did with different departments in the civil administration and NDRF under their FAMEX program, which led to a series of initiatives. And the last initiative was on a mock drill on, search and rescue in instances of building collapses. So this program went on successfully. And unfortunately, after 2-3 months of this initiative, which we did, there were back-to-back, I think, 3 building collapses in Faridabad. And during that time, we saw that the coordination mechanism which we tried to establish between different agencies and all actually worked quite well for us. There were already systems in place where we could coordinate and engage with NDRF, and the search and rescue plans were, very well conducted by the NDRF team, and we saw that it led to very well established SOPs further on building safety and all. It was after, these series of instances and all, we pushed again, the agenda of conducting safety audits for the buildings and all in the district, and that was quickly picked up by the administration, and we could see that these series of initiatives and approaches could actually help us to finally achieve our goal which we were trying to strive. So coming next to a different case study from my other experience of working in Odisha, and this is from Cyclone Phylin, where we had seen a devastating impact, particularly in southern districts of Odisha, Ganjam, and other regions. Immediately after Cyclone Phylin, there were massive floods in the northern districts also, and this is the case study from one of the villages called Chandan, which is in north districts of Balasore. And we saw that since post Cyclone Phylin, different relief aids were percolating towards southern districts, it was slightly difficult to mobilize the resources for these villages which were situated in Balasore and were affected badly by devastating floods. It was difficult to mobilize resources for that. And that was the time when we started for looking for an alternative strategies. And we saw that if it is difficult to mobilize, relief and recovery resources, probably we can capitalize on social protection schemes and safety nets which are there by the government, and started mobilizing community around it. And this strategy actually worked quite well for us, and we saw that the community empowerment and other processes actually help the community to engage with different government line departments, and they could successfully manage to mobilize different projects and different works from these line departments, which helped them to substantially reduce their vulnerabilities and all. This also completely stopped the internal displacements which were happening from this village. So this experience further from one village, we started implementing it in other villages also, and we saw that there were a lot of beautiful things that could be done using this approach of adaptive social protection, where communities themselves can engage better with government and can mobilize development projects which can be made risk resilient. So we had a lot of success stories, and saw that in situations where the resources is absolutely it's difficult to mobilize the resource for the immediate work, there are different pathways which can be explored. Of course, this concept of adaptive social protection was during that time we were just experimenting with it. It was not very well imbibed in our process and understanding also. But as we grew in this field, we came to know about different frameworks and all, and we saw that it had great potential. Following which, in 2018, we started digital innovation under this theme of adaptive social protection, which was particularly useful in mobilizing aid and support to COVID-affected population in various areas and geography. And these innovations in these digital solutions received very good recognition at various platforms like Spindle, and most recently the 11 billionth award also. Next, I want to share about my experience of an innovation in Ghosh, water sanitation and hygiene. I was working in Odisha, and in the geography in Kanas block in Puri, which was affected through salinity ingress, and they were not clean drinking water to drink for people. And we could find a solution which was out there, which was tested in lab, and it would have been really effective. But again, our constraint was to mobilize immediate resources for it. And we started looking for alternative solutions. And we could see that within the same organization, there were certain funds which were available under the renewable energy sector. We could reach out to those team members, and we told them about our innovation in Ghosh, and also discuss that there can be renewable energy solutions which can be merged with water filtration techniques and technologies, and this kind of synergy can help us both achieve our targets, and probably we will have a good innovation at the end of it. And thus such internal influencing actually helped us to mobilize resources initially for 2 units. We successfully piloted it, and currently there is a 3rd round of a project, a full-fledged project, which is going on, and I think the outreach has crossed nearly 100 villages with with a lot of innovative solutions around Ghosh. There are some pictures where you see flood-prone, flood-proof pond water filtration unit. These are iron removal plants, a carousel pump, which helps in filtration processes and all. So through these experiences, we, the message which I want to convey is that if you come across, a good idea, it is always important that you present it with conviction to your team members, and try to see and try to find out that if there is some opportunity to work on those areas. There can be initial struggles, but if you keep persisting on these ideas and all, personally, from my experience, I've seen that the team also helps to find solutions for you and try to see that if there is merit in the idea, you have an opportunity to implement it. Same thing. So this graph basically shows about the impact of the Ghosh models which we did. So disease surveillance data pre and post intervention, and you see a substantial reduction in disease surveillance. So these kind of strategies, a proper monitoring and evaluation, good set of data actually also helped us to reach out to different organizations for wider application and scale up. So same thing, I mean, happened with our work in early warning. This was in 2014. I was hardly a year old in Oxfam, and we went with this idea of implementing early warning solutions with Oxfam in Oxfam field areas. My mentors, they did say that there was merit in idea, but they could not implement it because during that time early warning was not there in organizations' strategy. However, they helped me to kind of identify other platforms where this idea can be taken up at individual levels, and that is where we received a small grant from UN-OCHA to develop a prototype, which we did. And there were hardware and software components of the whole end-to-end early warning system. And of course, OCHA supported us in developing these prototype models. But software components later, once we received recognition about these solutions in different platforms, including MIT, Parthos, and DCHI, we again took back the idea after making some changes and aligning it to certain mandates of the organization. We took it back to Oxfam to say that there are certain components which can be effectively implemented, and organization did supported us with those initiatives, and then we could implement early warning solutions in, I think, 6 river basins, 3 in Odisha. What you see here is volunteer network management system, which was quite effective in providing multi-hazard impact-based early warning solutions to farmers in 3 river basins in Odisha. after that success, we took some of the initiatives to the transboundary level also. What you see here is, you know, a system, an informal system which was developed in one of the transboundary rivers called Saralbanga between Bhutan and India, that worked quite well in 2019 and further in subsequent years also. So these are some of the experiences. So with this, I just wanted to say that, you know, when it comes to our field, basically there are a lot of, you know, situations where you see that, uh, you know, things needs to be done. But many a times there can be certain, you know, context, or there can be certain challenges which might be restricting you at that particular point of time, be it you know, resource or organization's mandate, or you know, maybe other things, can be any other thing for that matter. But you know, holding on to that solution or holding on to that idea, and you know, also listening to the people, to your team, taking feedback and going back again to them with certain set of solutions and all, you see that either the pathway is created by the team members, or you know, the context gradually changes, like we saw in the case of you know, advocacy on building safety and all. The context will present itself certain opportunities where if you are persistent enough, you will get an opportunity to implement those ideas in the field. So these are some of my experiences from the field. I don't know if it will be relevant for each one of you, but I thought that you know, these were some of the things which actually helped me to kind of, you know, bring shape to some of the ideas which we were initially thinking as ambitious, but we, you know, ultimately could do it with everyone's support and help. So with this, I'll stop here. If there are any questions, I can take those. Over to you, Rupa.
Thank you, Mr. Animesh, and thank you so much for sharing your experience in these diverse projects in India. Like, you have a really wide experience of different disasters, and most importantly, like, the on-field experience is always different than the working in office and then making all papers on that. But yes, and about the questions, so we are taking questions after the next after the sessions, like after the end of the both of the sessions. So we'll take question collectively, and yeah. So now we will move on to the next presenter for this session. So I would like to welcome Mr. Sumit Patil, Disaster Risk Management Professional, former Deputy Director, GSDMA, former Research Officer and Program Manager, SARC Disaster Management Center. So Mr. Patil has been engaged in the field of disaster management since 2010. He has worked at diverse levels and organizations, ranging from the regional level at SDMC, GSDMA at the state level, and HIPAA at the district level. He also has experience of working with the CEE NGO post-Sikkim earthquake. His area of interest is disaster risk management planning, institutional preparedness, and mock exercise and capacity building. Owing to this, he has interacted with key responsible officials and professionals at various levels. So, Mr. Patil, whenever you are ready.
Thank you very much, Rupa. I think I'll request Tanmay to present. Yeah, thank you, Tanmay. I can see the slides and hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, CRRP and NIDM, for giving this golden opportunity to discuss um, the key feelings and experiences that we have went through. And I also thank Animesh for that wonderful presentation, which is very easy for me to build upon and take some examples from it. So I've been working in disaster management from 2012. And initially, it began with the district level, which is Rewari and Mahendragarh district in Haryana. And for any DRM professional, it is very important to understand what it takes to work at district level, where you're the only person who is basically talking about disaster management, and you have to explain what disaster management or disaster risk management is to all the officers and all the stakeholders with which you are working and presenting, and you are doing the projects with. So it has to be a lot of communication that you have to do at various levels, with various levels of officers, and then based on their understanding, the success of your implementation depends how much they understand, how much they're enthusiastic about it, and uh, many other aspects that animes have said, like organizational mandate and resources, etc. And I'm going to talk about all these things only in my presentation. So then we can just move on to next one. Okay, so when we talk about working at district level and making things happen there, or implement the knowledge of disaster management there, so you have to understand we have stages of officers present. So one is the head of the administration, which we call as collectors or deputy commissioners, or departmental heads, HODs and CEOs. Firstly, you have to deal, explain, enlighten them about what you are trying to say, or what new you are trying to say, because all these officers are very senior and they have a fair amount of understanding, and you have to take that take your subject and move it to the forefront and bring it to the priority, so that they take it seriously, give necessary instructions to the officers.
I think Mr. Sumit.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, he's back.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, sorry, I just got disconnected.
No problem. Yeah.
Okay, so that's first thing. Then if we continue doing that, then we have to go to the supervisors level, and then again you have to make sure that they understand your subject. And these are basically technical officers and having a fair understanding of administrative challenges and financial challenges. And then when you able to get through, then you have to go to the coordinators and technical staff, and then to the field implementers. So if you consider a project like a school safety, or knowledge like a school safety, then your teachers and principal in that school become your field implementers, and their understanding of the subject dip, determines how much uh, output you're going to come up with. And if you assume the scale, so that you can also see the number of officers. I've just taken a screenshot of officers from R&B, and it goes into thousands of officers of one department. And then you have to, there are many projects which might go in multi-departmental way. So you have to consider that amount of stakeholders, and the communication that you have to do is with all of them, and make sure that your message is loud and clear, and also fight with the understanding, their understanding, make sure that you're able to convey your message to them, and they are now a part of it. In addition to that, they have their own priorities, they have their own targets, they have their own uh, work to do. And this is because disaster management is a new subject in many parts of India. So this might come up as a new task. And whenever there's a new task to any of the officer, you have to really be very, very strategic to make sure that the person takes it and then adopts it and goes ahead with it. So it's very essential that you talk to all this chain, and then make sure that the research is very well understood throughout this chain. Tanmay, to next slide. Let's go to the next slide. So ideally, when we try to make sure that schools are safer, hospitals are safer, yeah, other institutions like offices or industries are safer, and there are things, the mitigation measures are taken. All the research that is there in place basically is like a problem identification and solutions to that problem. So research that we see, they have this solution in place, but based on the context in which district we are, in which state we are, we have to see that the solution that is best suited in that context needs to be promoted. So the first step of contextualization comes where we convert that research into a guideline for, say, that state or for that district or for the nation. So there the research is agreed upon and brought into the contextual understanding of the departments and institutional setup once it is converted into a guideline. So it's kind of a agreement that, of course, this topic has been agreed and we are ready to work on this in this way. So this would be the stakeholders. The stakeholders are having these mandates, and based on that mandates, these actions would be taken. Then comes the point of building the capacities of all those stakeholders who are there, and for that we require training modules, training materials to be developed, and that too very target specific. Like if you say the main field implementer, so he'll require some different kind of material that will empower him. Say a decision maker, that will require, he'll require some other kind of material which will have more of coordination strategies. Implementer would require some more of a hands-on strategies or simple tips that help him to take the task. And continuously you have to convince them with IEC material, motivate them with IEC material, and give them best practices and share those practices with them so that they are motivated. One point that is very important in the practitioner's mind is that even if they are trying to do implement a DRR strategy for any knowledge that they have, there is some amount of uncertainties that um, am I doing the best, or is there a better way to do it? And that is that demotivates lots of people. What if this is not the best way to do it? So there are very simple example in some schools. Students were taught, in case of earthquake, you have to duck, cover, hold, and few students during the earthquake, they were found that they were playing outside on the ground. They came inside and recover and duck, and the way the messages can be distorted uh, can be really tricky. So you have to be converting this research into guidelines, training manuals, implementation manuals, IECs, so that the message is very loud, very clear, and specific to who will be doing it and who the stakeholder is. So that's how it can be translated into practice. Tanmay, we can go to next slide. Yeah, so this example is very important, and I have been working on school safety for say around 10 years. So after the 2001 earthquake, 2004 tsunami, and Kumbakonam fire, there were immense investments into the research of how to make schools and other infrastructure safer for earthquakes and cyclones and tsunamis. And then efficient stakeholders, very credible agencies like IITs and authorities got involved into it, and they worked really, really hard to come up with the project. So around the timeline of 2-3 years, substantive research was there that was available to actually make sure that the schools and hospitals and institutions are safer. Then the guidelines were issued by the national authority, and that guidelines helped to make sure that whenever we are talking to the officials at district level, they are sure that this has been um, promoted by a national agencies, this has been said by national agency, and we are not doing something which is totally out of box, because they don't have a very clear idea about it. So we have to show the national level or state level guidelines for it. Then the programs like a school safety program which was launched, and it has amazing targets to be achieved. It had sectors like structural safety, non-structural aspects, planning, mock drills, and everything that was a package in it. So that helped in taking um, taking those actions to the field and explaining them with IEC material and specific do's. This is your target and this is how you have to achieve it. These are the 10 things that you have to do. So it makes really simple for someone who is engaged at multiple events, because if you talk about a school and school teacher, and if he's going to implement the research that you are doing, the school is the uh, implementing all the new research that is being done by all the departments. So all the department and at village level will be the school and school teachers who will be taking up the task of delivering on that. So they don't have that much time to go into details of it. So we require something that is very crisp, that communicates to them, make sure that they know it comprehensively and take it up. And then again, the sector specific guidelines came up to strengthen that research and to make sure that we are on right target. That those guidelines have further made that the missing institutional mechanism and gave the responsibility of all the DRR aspect related to the school to various stakeholders, and continuously implementing and monitoring. And now we are into review of it, upgradation of it, and understanding of it. So if you look at the research to implementation aspect, so we have to deal with the challenges of first capacity building, convincing the staff, developing that missing institutional arrangements, because many of the department which say that's not my task, because it's not there, because it's not in the mandate. So those mandates have to be written down and then communicated, and then convert them into actionable points, build the capacity of all the stakeholders, make them explain why we are doing it, and then we can implement that. So this is a wide scale which takes time, and if you want to save that time, I have one more example how the research is converted into action very quickly. So this is one way, and we'll move to another. Tanmay, can we go to the next one? Yeah, so one learning from this end-to-end early warning systems that we see is of course, we start from gaining the knowledge about the risk. So it's highly technical. Agencies like IMD, INCOIS, and scientists are working days in and days out to assess the indicators, study them, bring up the data that requires for issuing and warning, and then they continuously collect that risk information, risk knowledge. Then that risk knowledge is shared with the state and national level decision makers. They take necessary decisions out of it. That decision is communicated, the risk knowledge, the warning, is being communicated in an implementation format, action oriented format, and then it is communicated to the masses at district level. And based on the capacities, like for example, do they have the capacities to respond, and do they have the shelters in place, they can take up that uh, necessary actions. So at one end, there's highest amount of research going on, and on the other end, we are dealing with the people. We are convincing the people to take up necessary actions and then evacuate or do to come up to the shelters, and whatever necessary actions are required. So this is done in 72 to 74 hours, sometimes even lesser than that. So we are looking at the ways where risk is communicated, going through decision makers, and if the institutional mechanism is in place, it's very easy to implement the risk knowledge or the research that we have. Tanmay, next. So if you want to expedite, or if you want to make sure that your research is going to get converted into actions, you have to communicate it with all the stakeholders, and that communication needs to be really strategic. We have to move beyond the documents that are used to communicate. So if your research is of 40-45 pages and it's written into a technical language, which of course a scientific research has to be written into technical language, there are chances that it might not end up being read. So to make sure that it's been read and understood, and to motivate others, it has to be written into different way, it has to be communicated into a different way, and understanding of with whom we are actually trying to communicate, the same research has to be written in totally different ways, or you have to convert it into audio visuals, or what all you can imagine with, because now the times are changing. People are not very easily reading stuff. They want to go into audio visuals and study what's being there, and then understand things. So you have to make sure your content is available in audio visual format as well. Tanmay, next. So to summarize, if the research has to be converted into practice, there requires a strategic communication at all levels, and it has to be really strategic, very well thought of. The more it is strategic, the more it is calculated, the lesser time it might take to convert into actions. It should be written in a very simple format so that it is understood at various levels. Modern modes of communication are to be used. Decision makers at highest levels are to be convinced of it using means of communication. Then you have to build capacities of all the stakeholders who are going to implement it at that level, and continuous support of handholding, say communication through webinars or discussions, and making sure their doubts are cleared, and field implementers are having a space where they can discuss their own challenges and come up with solutions, and that solutions are also very useful for the research to go ahead. So these are my experiences of 10 years when we try to make sure that any of the knowledge available has to be translated into action. We have to take care of all these aspects, and once we are able to take care of it, we see it being implemented at various levels in higher or lesser amount, depending on the awareness that we were able to do, depending on the situation, and slowly it has to be pursued and taken up. So these are my points, and I'll be happy to take questions once it is there. Over to you, Rupa. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Patil. And thank you for your extensive presentation, very informative. And yes, the whole process from idea to implementation, who are the different institutions involved and what are the challenges, importance of clear and strategic communication at all levels, and and the similar level of understanding in at different levels is really important for bridging the gap between research and practice. So yeah, so with this, we are done with this session. And now we will start our next session of this presentation of this webinar series.
Ms. Rupa, can we actually take some question answers if there are some?
Yeah, Okay, yeah. So
Yeah, before moving forward, it would be good to have some question answers and to interact with the participants.
okay,
We
sure.
have, yeah,
Yeah.
and
So
we have, I have two announcements to make.
Mhm.
Just to interrupt you, thank you. First of all, the participants can share their questions in the chat box. Otherwise, they can raise the hand through the Webex system and can speak their questions. We can allow them to speak their questions. Another thing is that there is a feedback form which will appear on the registration site against the name of the participants automatically after completion of the course. Participants have to fill up the feedback form and participants will also receive a e-certificate from the NIDM site only. There have been certain questions actually in the chat box. So the certificate will be provided, but it will be e-generated through NIDM site, and that will only be possible after filling up the feedback form. So after 80% of the course is completed, the feedback window will be open, and the participants are requested to fill up the forms before completing the program. Thank you so much. Over to you, Ms. Rupa.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Agrawal. So yeah, so we have a few questions for both our speakers. So I would like to first invite Mr. Animesh Prakash. So we have a question for you. The question is, what is the approximate cost of the Ghosh early warning system, and where in Orissa has this been installed? Installed by the government or by another agent, another organization like Oxfam, for example?
So, quotidian early warning system had different components of it. Particularly, in my first slide, I was talking about Life Tower, which was a prototype which we developed through support from UN-OCHA. That was an individual innovation project. And the estimated cost of developing a Life Tower in 2012 was around 35,000 rupees a unit. The VNMS system, the Volunteer Network Management System, which we developed with support from Oxfam. It's a software-based system which focuses on improving the early warning dissemination system. And a similar model under social protection framework called Adhikar Vani has been recently implemented by Oxfam in the first phase of COVID. And the cost of one message to be disseminated comes around 10 paisa to 20 paisa, somewhere between that. So these are very low cost solutions and all, which can be easily developed. Of course, if you integrate the hardware components in the early warning system and all, the cost can definitely go up. But with Oxfam, while we were working on these initiatives, we were focusing on the software-based solutions, which was quite costly.
Okay, thank you so much. And the next question for you is, what is the applicable building standard for building safety in disaster-prone areas, especially in the hills?
This is a very technical question for me to kind of, address. I'm not a civil engineer, cannot definitely address those aspects. But when it comes to, the management aspect of it, from disaster management perspective, definitely components like the building safety code and all, which have all the parameters, if that is properly being implemented by different agencies and all, these become important for us. There are various, I think 7 or 8 certificates which are issued at the time of construction by housing development and other development agencies and all. So those certificates are being properly issued, those inspections and monitoring are being properly done. So there are no violation when it comes to constructions and all. So these are certain aspects on which, while we were working in Faridabad, we had focus on these initiatives and all. And definitely when it comes to the absolute technical component of those things, those were handled by the experts. I'm sorry, I could not answer the technical aspect.
No, yeah, it's very technical questions. So okay, thank you so much, Mr. Animesh. And now we have next two questions for Mr. Sumit. So Mr. Sumit Patil, first question for you is, what would be your recommendation to professionals when they see a conflict their ideas and its acceptance. A fresher may not be aware of the mandates of a department. So how should she go about this problem?
Uh, so to firstly, the moment if you want to devise any solution or address any problem through your research, firstly you have to go to the mandates of the department, and it's available. It's not that it's not available. It's available on their websites. It's available in various uh, plans and documents that are being issued by the government, or the agencies. So if you study the DRM plans and of at national level, where it is strategically mentioned that the role of department is given. So there you can see, and from that you can derive at least the mandate of the department, so that they can be held responsible to take necessary actions on that. Secondly, we always talk about DRR as being the responsibility of whole of the society. So, and this idea is really in conflict with the mandate thing. So you have to be really articulate about uh, if you're designing a project which has multiple stakeholders involved into it, and there are gray areas of action that needs to be taken. That's a complicated task that you have to solve at first. Once you are able to solve that task, you will be able to uh, complete or make sure that the project or the actions are being taken. Otherwise, there will be a deadlock at some or the other end. I seriously consider that. I hope I have answered the question. I couldn't hear it completely because is there any part that I've missed? I can go ahead.
No, nothing. So we have second question for you here. You have a lot of experience. Okay, I think this, yeah, you have a lot of experience in the government side. If given the opportunity, would you do it again? I mean, would you choose a different sector?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it depends the knowledge that we have working in government departments, and if there are something which is really interesting and effective that can be implemented, it's always a pleasure to work with any of the stakeholders, be it government or private sector or any other sector, taking into account if we are communicating things properly. Because I have realized one thing for sure: if necessary emphasis is done on strategic communication of the knowledge that we have, it's very easy to take up the issues and bring it to a logical conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sumit. And we have I have one question for both of you, like personally. So you have had a lot of diverse experience, like both of you, Mr. Animation, Mr. Patil. So what would be your suggestion to a newcomer in the field, like me, like our CRP members? So what do you suggest?
Animesh, I think you should go first.
Well, this is a field, I think, you should be driven by passion, because, there'll be different situations where you'll be placed in very difficult scenarios. We have to go to the disaster affected areas in the immediate aftermath. A lot of situations can be, mentally disturbing also. But you should be driven by passion that the work which you're doing it for the last mile community, and it will definitely help in saving lives and livelihoods, and can help them to cope better with disasters. So again, I go back to Dr. Roy's statement that a disaster management professional, if he does his work properly, he can save millions of lives properly. So that kind of feeling, if you have that, and that will help you to keep going in the sector. And as you grow in the profession, you will see that there will be a lot of situations, a lot of circumstances. Particularly, Oxfam presented me with a lot of such opportunities where you could directly see that your work is making, you know, tangible impact and people are, you know, happy with the kind of work which you are doing. So, I mean, I think that that passion should be very important, which can help you to keep going.
Yes. I think if someone is choosing to be in the field of disaster management and work on it, he or she has to first understand that if someone is working in the field, may not be in disaster management, but any of the subject, he might have thought about the solutions that we are trying to share with him, and we have to be open with that idea that he has already uh, thought in his mind and tried to, you know, implement it at his level, but due to some mandate issue or time issue, he's not able to do that. Also, you have to understand that the point that you are totally convinced yourself about disaster risk management, the person in front of you may have no idea of it. So you have to start from literally zero at sometimes, and sometimes from minus, where the person has already seen that it is not useful at all. So keeping in mind these two things will, you know, reduce the stress or uh, what's happening kind of feeling. So you have to be very aware that it will take time for someone to understand a subject in detail and to act on it. It doesn't matter how much we are convinced with the topic. So you have to be really patient and persistent about it.
Okay, thank you to both of you. So I'm really sorry, like we had more questions for you. Your session is like very famous today. So we have Mr. Sardar Ramesh Sudan. He has raised his hand. Could we please unmute him and then let him ask the question?
Yeah, hello.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
this is
yes, you
Sardar.
can ask. Yeah.
Yeah, this is Sardar Ramesh from Kashmir, basically, and I'm a professional disaster practitioner working here in Kashmir, and some basic, expertise in the disaster management. But I would like to know that what kind of opportunities in career enhancement are there in India and abroad. Number one, and number second is that uh, how you will guide me in framing a disaster risk management plan in the district I'm working in Kashmir actually. So two things: one, opportunities in India and abroad, and second is about the uh, guidance regarding preparation of state disaster management plan vis-a-vis education. So these are the two quick questions. Thank you.
Animesh sir, would you like to start?
Well, I think both the answers, both the questions will have very elaborate answer. Definitely on support on, you know, preparing state disaster management plan is something where I think this session will not be sufficient enough. But my word of advice would be for you to kind of, you know, have consultations and discussions with as many line departments as possible. You know, just I would suggest that you identify different line departments who have core mandate for disaster management, and there may be other line departments also who have allied mandates for it. Have a look at that. Start reaching out to them and see that what is there which is existing. Many a times, what happens that we start, you know, reinventing the wheel from the scratch, but there are some absolutely beautiful and fantastic plans which are already out there. Um, you need to dig out. You need to do your review properly. You need to consult as many people as possible. Feel free to reach out to different experts, review different plans and all. And you know, I think consultation is the way. Once your draft is ready, take you know, have consultations around it, see if it is practical, if it is you know, kind of, you know, if it fits the need of different departments and all, and most particularly if it helps you to kind of, you know, manage disaster in a better manner. So that I think that can be useful. You can also go to planning departments which are into which are managing different tools like remote sensing and GIS and all, which can be very effective in planning and policies and all. So if you have a department in the state who are working on that, reach out to them, try to see that how they can also help you with that. Regarding opportunities, yes, there are diverse opportunities and all, at various fields. So I think every different sector will present with its different positive aspects to work with. Working at grassroots is immensely satisfying. You work with community on a day-to-day basis, and you see that there are very satisfying results which come out. Working with government will provide you a scope to bring change at a very widespread scale. With international agencies like Oxfam and others, who have years of accumulated experience and all, will be you will have opportunity to do some technically sound work. It will also help you to grow a lot, and definitely with agencies like UN, it will provide you opportunity to work closely with government and influence certain policies and advocacies in much better manner. So it's your choice. You need to assess that what is it which you want in your life, what is something which brings you the most satisfaction, and then make a careful selection for yourself, because this is making a career choice is a very personalized thing. So you can maybe do a careful evaluation on what each of the sector offers and which brings the most satisfaction for you personally. Over.
Yeah, I think the point that Animesh mentioned is uh, uh, the consultation. Uh, if you are able to reach the right kind of person who has uh, the most information, and there are these persons in each of the department, you have to, the effort is needed to be made to reach out to that person, and then you can get the technical as well as the practical challenges and with solutions to that. So do the consultation as much as possible and reach out to that right person and get the information. I think that's from my side.
Yeah, thank you so much, both of you. Very well answered. And I just noticed that we are running a little bit out of time, but that's okay. Really good questions and really remarkable answers. So now we will move. Now we will move to the next session of our day, like the last session of our webinar series. For this session, we have two young researchers who will be talking about their motivation behind choosing this field of disaster risk management for their continuing education and their experiences so far, as the title of the session itself says, pursuing higher studies in disaster risk management, motivations and reflections. So our first presenter is Dr. Sangeetha. Sangeetha is a researcher and has recently received her PhD in disaster risk mitigation and management from the Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee, IITR. She holds a B.Tech degree in civil engineering and M.Tech degree in disaster mitigation and management. Her research interests are GIS-based landslide zonation mapping through geostatistical models and numerical modeling for earthquake-induced slope failure at the site-specific level. During her doctoral program, she worked on several projects related to disaster risk reduction, which resulted in published papers, book chapters, and conference presentations. Her current research explores various facets of disaster in the Indian Himalayan region. As a member of the scientific community contributing to innovative research in disaster risk reduction in 2019, she is a young scientist in integrated research on disaster risk, IRDR, which is a research program co-sponsored by International Space Council and United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. Sangeetha, over to you. Are you here? Sangeetha, you're on mute if you are speaking. Yeah, great.
Okay, now I'm audible?
Yes, yes, you are.
Yes, okay. My slides are visible, I hope.
Yes, you might need to put it in the Yeah, this one.
Okay, now it's visible.
It is visible, but it's still in the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Very good afternoon to everyone. I am Sangeetha. I have completed my doctorate degree in disaster mitigation and management from the Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee. Earlier, I had completed my Bachelor of Technology degree in civil engineering and Master of Technology degree in disaster mitigation and management. So today, I would share my experience as a research scholar in disaster mitigation and management field. In this talk, I'll share my experience during MTech and PhD. Then I'll share importance of PhD in DMM field. After this, I'll share the options available after PhD and associated risks. So the very first question is why did I opt for masters in disaster management field? So to be very honest, pursuing my masters in disaster mitigation and management was not the first choice. I remember my first day at center, I was little bit confused whether I should join water resource department or disaster, as I was waitlisted in the department of water resource as well, and WRDM department was quite well established as compared to center. So that day, I interacted with Professor Garola, who was the head of center that time, and he motivated us for disaster research and makes us realize that this is the new future. DMM course in IIT Roorkee is multidisciplinary, so it's an excellent platform to learn about different aspects of disaster. As a part of my master's program, I have gained knowledge about the technical, social, and financial aspects of disaster management. For my second year project, I have worked on the seismicity of Northwestern Himalaya. And during my master's, I have done a one month long internship with NIDM. Now moving to the next part, why did I opt for a PhD even after completing my master's? So doing a master's in disaster management field was definitely accidental in my case, but pursuing a PhD as a career option was an informed choice. Choosing PhD has manifold reasons. PhD is one of the core fundamental research, whereas master is just a beginning. PhD opens a scope for position in good institutes, faculty positions in good institutions, postdoc research position. It provides advanced lab exposure from domain expert, platform to attend various workshop training program and international exposure. After my master's, I wanted to pursue my career in research, so I have opted PhD in disaster mitigation and management. During my BTech, I was very passionate about geotechnical engineering, so I took a landslide, which is a geotechnical problem, as a research topic for my PhD. I had joined my PhD in 2015, and recently I have completed in 2021. These years are the most challenging period of my life. I have learned so many things. The title of my PhD thesis is Earthquake and Rainfall Induced Landslide Hazard Assessment in Uttarakhand. During my PhD, I have worked on regional level landslide hazard assessment and site-specific slope stability analysis. I have published several research articles in national and international level peer-reviewed journals. In addition, I have attended and presented my research work at 4 international and 3 national conferences. In 2018, I have presented my research work at 16th European Conference on Earthquake Engineering, Thessaloniki, Greece. I have participated in various training programs, workshops at the international and national forums, which have enhanced my knowledge through formal lessons, tutorials, and field training. In September 2019, I have participated in a 2-week-long international school in landslide risk assessment and mitigation at the University of Lausanne, Switzerland. And in 2019, I have been appointed as a IRDR Young Scientist. Now, moving on to the next part, what does PhD means in this field? In my opinion, scientific research definitely helps in managing a disaster. As we know, earthquakes, landslides, storms, heat waves, and floods have been leading causes of death. The most recent figures show that natural disaster lost $131.7 million in 2018 and affected millions of people around the world. While some natural hazards are unpredictable, several technologies and research promise to help with the forecasting and prevention and allow responders to act sooner rather than later. To help reduce the loss of life, scientists today employ a wide array of technological tools to better anticipate natural disasters and improve weather forecasting. With the technological advancements such as artificial intelligence and machine learning, making it easier for scientists to process and interpret a large amount of data, weather prediction and its impact on population can now be better addressed. In the past 22 years, the cyclone forecast system and evacuation procedure have evolved rapidly, as a result of which the death tolls in recent cyclone like Amphan and Yas have been considerably lower. In 2099, a super cyclone devastated Odisha, claiming more than 10,000 lives. However, during the latest very severe cyclone Yas, the total number of deaths were very less, approximately 20. Now the next question, what after PhD? There are plenty of opportunities after PhD like postdoc, faculty position or industry. For postdocs, you can interact with the same domain expert, focus on the publication in research field. Most important part is publication. Approach individual professors who is working in the field of your interest, apply to different fellowship. There are so many fellowship available for postdoc. Now, there are some challenges associated with doing your master's and PhD in disaster management. I would like to mention some here. DMM is interdisciplinary branch, so there is difficulty in establishing a relationship between multiple disciplines. So having a master's and PhD in interdisciplinary branches has its own drawback. The reality is our education system is ready for the interdisciplinary curriculum, but our job system is not ready yet. So it's really very disappointing when you have a PhD from one of the best institutes and still you cannot get into academia. Through my experience, my suggestion would be try to connect with your parent degree. There are a number of ways where you can connect and collaborate your bachelor knowledge with the disaster specific domains. For example, if you want to pursue your research in landslide disaster and your bachelor degree in civil engineering, you can go for the slope failure problems. It's an application of geotechnical engineering. Similarly, if you have a background in GIS and remote sensing, you can go for the hazard and susceptibility modeling and landslide detection through satellite image. Second challenge is publication. Be aware with the publication requirement in different institutes. If you have background in engineering, try to publish your paper in FPI and Scopus journals. And other hand, if you are from social science background, then go for social science citation index. Make sure your publication get a value during your job process. With these words, I would like to thank NIDM and CRRP for this wonderful webinar and giving us an opportunity to share our experience. Thank you. Over to you, Rupa.
Yeah. Thank you, Sangeetha, for your presentation. I'm sure a lot of young people in research can relate to your presentation here. Yeah. So now I would like to invite our second presenter here, Ms. D. Saran Prakash. Saran holds a master's degree in disaster management with a concentration in conflict, peace, and development from Jamsetji Tata School of Disaster Studies, TES, Mumbai. She holds a bachelor's degree in political science from Indraprasth College for Women, University of Delhi. She is currently a doctoral scholar at the Department of Sociology and Political Science, Diyarbakir Education Institute, deemed university. Saran's primary interest rests in playing an actively conscientious role in minimizing the adverse impacts of disasters on the vulnerable sections in the society by contributing to their capacity building and thereby disaster risk reduction. Her goal is to be a part of the endeavor of spreading knowledge and education, as well as enhance her overall skills through research. And I would also like to highlight here, like both these speakers are members of CRRP India. So over to you, Saran.
Thank you so much, Rupa, for that wonderful introduction. I have just stopped my video to avoid any technical glitches here. I'll be sharing my presentation now. Rupa, can you please confirm if this is visible?
Yes, yes, it is. Great.
All right. Thank you. So greetings to one and all. My name is Saran Prakash, and it is an absolute honor for me as a doctoral scholar and a member of CRRP India to be participating in this webinar. I will be sharing some bits from my professional journey until now. To admit it honestly, when I received the theme of my presentation, the first thing that crossed my thoughts was, oh, I have a lot to talk about here. So clearly, I'm deeply grateful for this opportunity where I'm getting to share this virtual floor with such highly experienced professionals. And without wasting any more time, I will begin with my presentation. So I was given a few guiding questions which are flashing on the slide right now. I shall try to answer all those, and I will be happy to take your questions at the end of my presentation. I will begin with, I'm sorry. Yeah, I will begin with why I chose to take up research in the first place. So as unrealistic as it might sound, my interaction with academic understanding of research actually began when I think I was about 9 or 10 years old. I used to jump into my mother's study and she would happily engage me in her PhD dissertation work, of course, in a way that I could understand. She would assign me very simple jobs like highlighting some words or looking for spelling mistakes or checking if the in-text citations were mentioned in the list of references at the end. And with whatever little understanding that I could get, I was surely attracted towards the entire concept and process of research. So I gradually began practicing research ethics like citations in my school assignments. Then a few years later, when I saw the immense amount of satisfaction that shined when my mother received her doctorate, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And since then, my wish remained undeterred, of course, with a few minor distractions like wanting to fly a plane. I guess that is really unrealistic now. Anyway, so coming to why disaster management, why DM? For all the students from disaster management course of TISS, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, who have joined us right now, I'm sure this question will haunt them tonight again. We have been time and again answering this very question and have learned once it is seen, always it is seen, with all its elements hung on us, including the interview questions. Anyway, to come to the point, as I said, I was interested in taking up research since a long time. At the time of applying for postgraduate courses, I had several options in front of me, including the subject of international relations, which was very close to my heart, and political science in general, which was what I hold my bachelor's degree in. And during my homework for applications, I came across disaster management being offered as a full-fledged master's program in TISS, one of the premier institutes of India. And I was introduced to this subject for the first time, I think in 9th standard. So when I saw this term years later, for some reason unknown, I had stars out of my eyes. I looked up about the program and its structure. There was absolutely nothing that could repel me from taking up this program. For one thing, I knew that disaster management was a very new subject, which was not studied much, which meant that there was immense scope for research. Besides, there was one more motivation that I was aligning my decision making with, something that I learned from one of my guides. He told me that as a school going child, you are 100% at the receiving end of knowledge. As a college going student, you are 70% at the receiving end and 30% at the contributing end. As a student of post-graduation, it is only 30% that you receive and 70% should be your efforts. And post that, once you enter the field of research, it is entirely yours to shape. 100% giving back to the society and contributing in what your teachers do. And this explanation definitely motivated me to take up something that was going to be truly beneficial for the society which I'm a part of. And needless to say, today, when the entire world is dealing with the unparalleled situation of this pandemic, I think it is disaster management in its several forms that is helping the society in a significant manner, following the medicine and medical science, of course. Clearly, then, disaster management can be foreseen to be an important element of our future. And I say future because at present, I still see a long room to go for us in pulling disaster management up from its nascent stage. And all this that I have just said, I hope answers the question, why a PhD after a master's? So I will move on to the next question. What does a PhD in this field mean? Frankly speaking, a PhD in this field is a worthy risk. It is a long chain with pairs of extreme situations and feelings. This includes hope and hopelessness at the same time. It includes bright future and absolute blurriness at the same time. And please note that I am saying blurriness and not darkness, which means there are possibilities even in the absence of opportunities. I will back up these huge jargons that I just used with a bit of my own experience. My career plan, it had it that I will take up a PhD with no breaks, finish it, and then get straight into academics and teaching. Now, rarely is the ride so smooth for anyone, right? Yeah. So even before I could finish, I finished my master's, I started preparing for an exam which happens to be a prerequisite for PhD admission in several institutes in India. We can choose the subject in which we would like to take the exam. Unfortunately, disaster management is still not listed in that exam as a subject, even 15 years after disaster management made its space as an academic field in India. Anyway, so I had to go back to political science, which was proving to be a lot tougher than I had imagined, largely because the syllabus of this exam was so voluminous that either I could focus on my master's dissertation and exams, or I could focus on this prerequisite exam. And that was not a challenge for me alone, as I could see several others, my contemporaries, having to go back to a different subject that they had in their bachelor's program. And that was only one challenge to begin with. While I was writing several proposals, I came across several challenges, some of which were anticipated and some of which were totally new. That takes me to the next guiding question. How can one look for opportunities for PhD or postdoctoral, and how easy is it? To begin with India, there are less than 10 centrally funded academic institutes which offer a full-fledged PhD program in disaster management. So it is sort of easy to visit their website and look up for the requirements, right? No, because it is these very requirements which pose hurdles for us, honestly admitting. For example, in some places, the authorities ask for an MPhil degree, of course, which has now been scrapped, or a work experience of over 5 years. Here, not to oppose anyone or any institute, but how practical is it to expect a work experience of over 5 years from a person who has just finished a master's? So basically, this means that the potential scholar has no option there but to choose an employment and wait patiently for 5 years to pass no matter what. As it is, the scholar has very limited options in terms of institute. On the top of it, we have this entire experience thing. Then talking of international application processes, while largely the admission process remains similar with some minor differences, there are very detail-oriented complexities that one needs to take cognizance of. So the process of application abroad is very different from that of India. I will try to elaborate on the process a little and its challenges stepwise for a clearer understanding. So the first step here is identifying universities. There are different ways of doing this too, as I understood from my rather modest experience. The first is geography-wise. We can narrow down on a few countries where we would like to apply in the field of disaster studies, particularly other than Japan. Scandinavian countries are what several established scholars suggest to consider. Then we have funding-wise, identifying which universities are offering funding opportunities in disaster management or related fields. These opportunities include scholarships, fellowships, teaching assistantships, bursaries, project fellowships, etc. Then we have Scholarwise Method. So when we read academic papers, let's say during our masters, we can make notes of the authors of the papers and the scholars mentioned in the references and citations. Accordingly, we can look at their profile to learn where they studied from and where they are currently teaching. This helps us identify the universities with courses in a less time-consuming manner. Then we move to the next second step, which is profile matching. When we apply to universities abroad, it is generally suggested that we approach a potential advisor or supervisor beforehand and discuss our academic interests and expectations. So in this, there are twofold things that we need to keep in mind. Keeping a preliminary proposal ready before approaching the potential supervisor. And it is important that our proposal aligns with their research interest. At this point, I should highlight that as it is, disaster management finds very humble mention in academics across the world. More often than not, our proposal and the following research work can be a cross between disaster management and something else, say sociology or law or political science or climate change studies. Therefore, it is extremely important that we keep PhD options of not just disaster management open, but also of related and relatable disciplines in our radar. Moving on to the third step of application, should the research interests of the potential supervisors and that of ours align with each other, we move forward to the application process, which the first of which includes statement of purpose or expression of interest. This has to be as elaborated introduction of the applicant or the candidate as possible, with the right words and grammar in place. Extremely important. And not just that, for us in disaster studies, it is extremely important that we highlight, underline, italicize, and embolden how and why our field of disaster studies relates to the discipline in which we are applying for research, which includes how it will benefit the other discipline, as well as how it will contribute to their department and university and even country. So carefully, and also in this process, we need to carefully balance between what we can contribute to their country and our home country too. Then we have prerequisite examination. Language proficiency examinations are something which are asked by most universities across the world. And when I say this, I must highlight something that I was not told or I figured it out myself. When someone says, just take your language test, write an SOP and bang, you are through. Please sense the several tens of steps that are not shared by anyone. For example, right when the thought of research from abroad is conceived in your mind, please look at the exact requirement of language test, as in, at what score will you be accepted in a certain university? Because the thing is, every university has different thresholds. So accordingly, you can prepare well for the test and clear thresholds, clear it in the first go. And this is definitely not to scare anyone. The test is not difficult, but a little homework on our part won't harm anyone, right? Then moving on to the funding. Studying abroad can become a bit easier if we can manage to get a scholarship, assistantship, or bursary, as I had mentioned, or like any other opportunity. Because despite the funding source, it is still not a cakewalk financially. And as I could understand, the strategy for getting one should actually begin right from when you're a child, like getting involved in co-curricular activities and taking up leadership in different kinds of platforms and initiatives adds value to your candidature as a potential scholar. It is not too late, even if you have reached the bachelor's program already. Even then, there is ample amount of time to get involved in different sorts of initiatives. And why is this important? Because as I could understand, the research proposal and SOP are for the university to assess the candidature of a potential scholar. And the certificates of achievements and so on are for the funding authorities to ensure that they are investing in a bright candidate who will utilize their investment to the best. Then it was also always a confusion for me whether to apply for a scholarship before I secure an admission, or should I apply it after that? What if I secure the admission but do not get the scholarship? Been there, felt that. What if I get the money and end up going nowhere? The thing is, the requirements the requirements, the timelines, and the deadlines for the application of the admission process of the universities and the scholarships are generally different from each other. It is a different thing if it is a teaching assistantship or a project fellowship. In this light, nobody could actually give me a correct answer. So I figured with a lot of preparedness that the two processes have to take place parallelly, simultaneously. Begin with whatever opens up first and keep a close track on the timeline of the other. So this was a brief sharing about the process of PhD admissions, and I leave it to the wisdom of you all to decide how easy is it, whether it is easy or not. Do you become a disaster management expert? I have been managing the tornado rising in me every now and then during the process of PhD application for all the challenges and disappointments that it brought along. But on a serious note, what is a disaster management expert after all? I mean, I have had several discussions with my friends and colleagues where I strongly objected to the term disaster management. Do we, really manage a disaster after all? I mean, in the past 1 year, with COVID-19 hovering over us, how much did we manage the disaster itself? No, we did not. Disaster happened. That is it. We saw it unfurling on our TV screens, and that is it. Yes, what we did later on is DRM, or disaster risk management. And now several institutes and organizations are focusing on reducing the further risks of disasters, or which is DRR. So I do not personally relate to the term DM expert. For one thing, if I call myself or anyone else a DM expert, it means that the person is fully capable of handling all the phases of a disaster cycle. I mean, really, is that even possible? Secondly, I, being in academics, choose a phase from reactive or proactive phase of the disaster cycle and explore it further. So I consider myself an explorer right now, searching again the solutions to the concerns which appear problematic to me. So, and once I have finished my PhD, I'm hoping to be a DRR or DRM professional in academics who finally sort of understands the nuances of different disaster situations and can contribute in appraising our DRR and DRM policies and practices. And that can happen with guidance and coordination of professionals from the field also, so that we do not continue considering disaster studies idealist and divorced from the field. Do you feel a sense of responsibility towards contributing, having learned so much? Firstly, I have really learned only so much, actually. But I'm glad that my process of learning is progressing parallelly with sharing. I waited patiently for a little over 2 years to finally get into a formal research. In the process of trying and trying again, I have experienced more concrete disappointments than successes when I count. But when I try to understand the value of everything that I undertook in the past 2 years, I know that I was growing, improving, and more importantly, contributing. By contribution, I mean contributing in small bits to a disaster-stricken community via a project that I had the opportunity to be a part of because of CRRP India, contributing with my writing skills and thoughts, and contributing in identifying the shortcomings in my own field of disaster studies, which can be and has to be, they have to be filled in. Today, as I'm sharing all this, I do feel a sense of responsibility towards making this emerging field established, accepted, and grown in academics, especially in India, so that we don't have to look outwards to reduce the risks that exist inside our country. Of course, exposure to different countries and cultures is a different wish altogether. But if young professionals like us do not own up disaster studies, 15 years from now, we will still be opening the concept notes of several webinars and seminars with the words, disaster management is an emerging subject in India. I mean, imagine that will be 30 years after disaster management was introduced in India. So yes, definitely, I do feel a great sense of responsibility towards contributing to disaster studies through my research, and also by working with and learning from my colleagues of CRRP especially, who are extremely dedicated to this field and who provide motivation for me also to not give up on disaster studies. So I think every person's journey towards his or her professional goal is a bumpy ride in their own capacity. This is how my journey began. It may or may not be the same for others. It might be easier or it might even be more fun. Guidance that we receive from different professionals will be diverse and sometimes also confusing. It is, I think, for us to decide which advice to implement and which one to just listen to increase our knowledge. Finally, I would just like to repeat what I said before. PhD in disaster management and disaster studies is a worthy risk. Not to draw any fancy picture here, there will definitely be challenges, sometimes maybe a little more in disaster studies than in others. But I think that itself should motivate us young professionals to engage ourselves in this field. I mean, after all, it is because young professionals like myself and several more stuck to our dedication towards this field that we are able to share with everyone our learning today for improvement. Even yesterday, if you might have heard, if you might have listened to the speeches yesterday, the sessions, Dr. Ranit Chatterjee shared such relevant and invaluable experiences from his journey because despite the odds, he brought out the best of disaster studies in his efforts. And it is because of because experts like Dr. Ripal Kanji and like self-motivated professionals chose this path which is less traveled, that we understand that if we can harbor a little patience and have immense faith in our own decisions, 15 years from now, we can expect not having this conversation again. And instead of asking why disaster management, we can hope to ask why not disaster management. So that was it on my behalf. Thank you, everyone. Over to you, Rupa.
Thank you so much, sir. And thank you so much for sharing this extensive and very informative presentation. I'm hoping and I'm sure that all the youth, all the young researchers and professionals who really want to study disaster risk management for their masters, for their PhD, will be very they will be very helpful. Like they will be very benefited from this presentation. So if we do we have any questions from the audience here, participants? Is there someone who wants to ask some questions? We can take 1 or 2 questions because we are running out of time. If not, then I would like to ask questions to both the presenters. Some noise. Okay, so my first question is to Dr. Sangeetha. Sangeetha, when you do a PhD, is it often understood that you know everything about disasters? Is it true? A PhD holder would know all about disasters. What would be your answer?
You probably get an opportunity
Hi.
We are having some noise. I don't know from where. Okay, yeah, please, Sangeetha.
Yeah. So I think if you're pursuing PhD, you cannot know all about disasters. Like you can do a certain domain, you can choose a certain domain at a time. Either you can do a research in a landslide or you can do a research in some particular disaster. And itself in a disaster, there are so many aspects. Like in a landslide, you can go for the technical aspect, you can go for the social aspect, you can go for the financial aspect. So there are so many aspects in a disaster. You can go and research it during your PhD.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sangeetha. Saran, the next question is for you. After you are done with your PhD, of course, you would go into academics, but would you want to go into something like social entrepreneurship in an attempt to give back to the society? Also, you would probably get an opportunity abroad after your PhD. Would the aspect of not being able to serve your country bother you?
Thank you for that question, whoever has asked. I actually like the question. So answering the first part of it, definitely I would like to consider something like social entrepreneurship. And I think that would also help me develop as a multifaceted professional who is into not just academics, but also into just as the person mentioned, social entrepreneurship, and that would be a wonderful opportunity to be able to contribute to the society. And moving on to the next part of the question, I don't know if I am going to get opportunities abroad, but I hope I do. It is, I think, up to me how I design my study ahead. What kind of study do I take up? So even if I'm staying abroad, it will depend on the kind of study, on the geography that I'm choosing for my study. So if I'm choosing India, then definitely I believe that would be a way of contributing to my home country. So for one thing, I can ensure that I am striving to take up initiatives and as in to do whatever in whatever I'm doing, in some way or the other, I contribute to my country, be it in very small ways. So when I do get an opportunity, if I do in abroad, that will still remain one of my important objectives.
Okay, thank you so much, Saran. Yes, it's based on my personal experience. I would say it's always possible to work in your country, even if you are studying outside India. So yes, and of course, I would like to encourage all the youth, all the young researchers to do their study, do their PhD in India, outside India, and work for your country. We need it, like India needs it today. And I would like to invite now Dr. Garima Agrawal for her views.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rupa. Thanks a lot. And I must congratulate all the speakers for such a vibrant presentations. Two presentations from Mr. Animesh Prakash and Mr. Sumed were exceptionally wonderful, which came out directly from the field. And they spoke about how advocacy and innovation can help to strengthen the capacities of the professionals. Mr. Animesh Prakash had actually spoke really well by saying that if you come across a good idea, it's important to present it with conviction. There can be existing struggles, but later on you will find the solutions and opportunities. So I believe that that particular part was really, really helpful. And the another two presentations, which were by the researchers, Dr. Sangeetha and Dr. Saran, it was absolutely pleasure to listen to them and their thought-provoking ideas and the challenges which they had actually faced while conceptualizing their thesis, their work on disaster management. And yeah, of course, that's very true. As Dr. Saran said, that she went through various challenges. First of all, there were no much departments available where PhD could be taken up. So there was a series of issues which she could find out while beginning from the conceptualizing on which subject she is supposed to do the PhD, then aligning your research interest with the interest of professor. So that's really important. That's how we become the DRM expert actually, because we start from somewhere else and we end up with something else. So, but the fact remains same, that disaster management cannot be managed by the single person. We can only be specialized in one field. We cannot specialize in all the fields. So we have to focus our interest and align our interest with our past education, and we have to perceive that notion. And of course, we have to go to the department which understand the. For example, if I am a social scientist, I will definitely go for a geography or sociology department or economics department to do my PhD. I will not go to the civil engineering department. So it is the way we have to find out our ways to do PhD in today's world. I'm not sure there would be any day when disaster management will come out as one standalone subject, because it is a multidisciplinary subject. It cannot be just one subject. So that is my stand on it. These are never-ending questions, but ultimately we have to find out the solution. As in the morning also, Mr. Aslam said that we need to mobilize our interest. We have to empower ourselves from within. So where the question starts, the answer lies from within only. So with this, now I would request Professor Chandan Ghosh to share his idea and his conclusion on today's webinar. Thank you. Over to you, Professor Chandan Ghosh.
Okay. Yeah, excellent presentation I have been listening to. And it is especially last two presentations from the young researcher for which this program is dedicated. We all talked on our angle, but you both Sangeetha and then Saran.
And Saran.
Yeah, both of you have given your own understanding. You have not carried anything from anybody else. The things that you have gone through, which you have very nicely shared for other young professionals who are attending this program. So in that way, I would say that the kind of momentum that this program has created today, especially with your presentation, both of your presentation, which was the very goal of framing this program by NIDM and along with CRRP. So I would say that now I recall when I visited USA Emergency Management Institute in 2008. At that time, when we are discussing about how they have taken the program in USA in 1990s about the disaster management related studies and research. So that FEMA, one of the things that which I still remember, that they said that the program started in really in 1990, 91, 92. And of course, there are so many UN events also took place, 1989 to 1999, and then 1994, Yokohama, and then so many other now we are familiar with. So they say that in USA they started in 1990, but hardly few university like you were mentioning around 10, 15 institute in India. They are, yes, we know. Many are giving, but number has increased, not by the momentum that it should be today. But the one that I wanted to mention at that time, when they started the program in 1990-91, and then some effort from FEMA took. They made the syllabus and everything. They involved the teachers, and so then they have a wide level of consultation in 1991-92. Then the way now UGC or AICT that they are making mass level of training, awareness, capacity building, of course, thanks to COVID in that way. So now the awareness, especially through such kind of programs where you are also sharing that in what way a PhD has to be done, including that where funding can be or what process has to be done. So which is now these days, it is available and one can pursue whatever goal they want. And so that way, just USA part, when they started in 1992-93, and then they did a special emphasis on PhD research. Then within 2 years of time, in 1995, I still remember, more than 100 universities were offering research level studies and taking projects and other things. In 95 itself, but which I would say that that idea is being germinated right now, or maybe last 4, 5, 7 months, that what is the importance of research in disaster management area. And so now you said also 15 years that we have been going for making plans. And we all know, we are smiling that what even I can see also, even Garima also, or even myself also sitting here in an idea. we know that we rather do not know that where we are failing to come up to the needs of the society and in terms of research. Research. Abdul Kalamji always used to say, research. So, but we are now familiar with the word research, but only thing is that when at your level, when you are able to guide little younger professional like than you, I think, and that too through such platform where, you know, so I think this will go very, very long way. Whatever tall talk we talk sitting over here, sitting in a cozy chair, will not work until and unless we walk on the path that we are talking. And especially with the necessities, like in the last part that Sangeetha was telling, or even if you go abroad or you are doing PhD, just you have emphasized on PhD in disaster management, changing the attitude from why disaster management to why not disaster management. I think this is something really very impactful statement that you have presented, especially Saran. And why not? So in that regard, I would like to say that some of the things that you need not to go abroad, because from abroad, it is not that they also solved their problem at par with the problems that being coming up as on today, that when disaster database that we are seeing EMDAT since 1972 onward, it is increasing trend. So development, definition, and many things we can make a lot of statement on that, why things are increasing or why earthquake is increasing. Some people would say that no, we have put now more than 70,000, which was not there even few thousand in 1960. So 70,000, 17,000 stetho-like of instrument are there on the earth. And they are constantly able to search that where earthquake has come. So more and more number or dots are coming on the tectonic map or other things. So we have become more aware about the instrumental things. Now the thing that all around searching and finding out that the problems that we are facing over here, it is mounting up. More and more things are mounting up. And in the same time, the extensive research tools in the name of softwares, or now, yes, artificial intelligence, blockchain, or analytics that which are redefining our way of thinking in the industry 4.0 revolution that taking place, man not versus machine, man and machine, machine and man together and working, and then so many communication tools, IoT tools that coming up. So the research, as I think again I'm taking that whether if it is landslide, many other things are there. So in our time, 30 years back, when we are just going like that, okay, my seniors told this, we used to follow. And we never saw things that available online, sharing, and it is available for anyone to go through in the online YouTube or in our server. We had nothing at that time. So whatever that our professor told or whatever senior or somehow we could, so there is no comparison between the kind of, I would not say we are stressful, we did a big work, not like that, but the kind of information that which is available today. And so the amount and voluminous information that available today, too much of information often makes us even indecision. A lot of indecision things are there. So we have to look back to the nature, and we have looked back, not that I would not make my AC functioning well, because if it doesn't work for a few minutes, then we get lose temper. But not that, we have to go back that to redefine such kind of facilities that which I should not say we are enjoying, rather we are taking in order to make us, or in order to put our more effort, more efficient effort towards a sustainable development, which is the goal, as everyone now we are able to know. So while going for research I would like to say that just don't go to the research and just don't only go to the PhD or whatever standard methods of SOP or methodology is there. You define it first, the problem that you want to take it out, so that you can, not that giving a challenge, rather you present it to your supervisor, would-be supervisor, that this is the problem that I am facing in my courtyard or near my locality area. There are every day several problems are coming up, and so identify. You spend rather more time, like after MSc, before going to PhD, if you put some of your time in understanding that what is going on in the field, then you make up your mind. Take some time and make up your mind, define your problem very well, and then focus on that. Then you can decide, not that any institute will decide that you come. No, you will be in a position, you will be in an axis or position that you will choose whom, because in internet now things are available. So I would say that disaster management related research, that which should be go on right now, you choose your department where which facility is available, rather than you go there and then go through the way that we have done in our time. So in that case, you will be given a balance that relating your research output, not by only seeing the graphs or colorful definition of things or whatever, put some input parameter and output parameter is coming. So I'm able to make 2-3 papers, which is the goal, of course, which is the requirement. But if you spend a few months, few years, maybe working with them, so many NGOs are there, INGOs are there, many government projects are there. Even NIDM now, we are having so many young professionals over here. So the kind of experience that you will have in between joining PhD and after your master level, because that is a requirement, if you spend few months in the field, in whatever capacity you can, then focus yourself on the problem and make SOP based on that. Of course, in that case, you will be leading your work, and when you define the problem, then you will be guided by the particular faculty or institute that which are the tools, which are the courses to be taken up. So in that case, with little bit of field experience will make your PhD research not like a machine, or not like a machine means, I would say it is not a good word to use it. Like 3 papers are required, 2 papers are required, so I have published it. That satisfaction, which of course it will be very much required in the current competitive world, but later on you will see that with this experience and after that reaching that goal of publication, then you see in the horizon that which problem you took up, whether you can implement it, whether being in India or being abroad, wherever you are, because many of our NRIs or OCI, they are so much, we are not able to catch their attention. That is our incapability. Even though attention is being given that how much money they are remitting to their dear and near ones. But now, because of this, this open world, seamless communication that we are able to do, so let us also look at that who is who, and before framing up your idea, and after framing up your idea, then do PhD. Before you finish or submit your PhD, you should be also in a position to connect with 4 or 5 research lab for postdoc or something. And that, because the guide that you are going to choose, if it is more than 50, if their age is more than 50 and professor, they are already like us, we are already become unrelated to the current stake that needed by the young researcher, because we are not in touch with that. But if you are joining with associate professor, that is not also desired in our time, because we want to be known at that time that which is the professor that we have worked. Because at that time, number of PhDs were very few. But these days, that emphasis should come to who is the recent MIT, return IIT, or some faculty in a university or in an institute, that who has got some work in the frontal area. So then he is connected to 10 more. Then you will be automatically finding a window to create your own path and future. So these are all, being grown while you are in the system. You will be mixing with, sharing with your fellow, not students, rather your fellows that who are doing the work, PhD. And at the same time, it is also known that while every professor is having now at least 8 PhD, 10 PhD, 20 PhDs are there, In those days, it used to be 1 or 2. But what is happening these days that everyone is doing separately. And that laboratory and students' communication, understanding that, which was ingrained in our time when no internet was there in 1987 to 1991 in IIT Kanpur. But some kind of specialty when you show that which other 7 areas that 7 students are doing in the same lab, or your related area, like landslide is not only landslide. So you have to look at, while in the institute, attend some of the relevant lectures, courses, and so that you can fill up your whatever things is needed, you thought, focused, discussed, that you can fill up so that you become sufficiently not dependent, I would say. You will have your own axis, you will be able to, generate. So that is something that big institute or those famous institute, they often encourage to take subjects in multidisciplinary. Disaster management is like that. So that part, I think our young professional or who is going to be budding disaster management specialist in the years to come, we see that let us handhold each other. We are as young as you, because we are also in the same path of learning as well as working whatever we are trying to share with you. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Rupal, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your enlightening and comprehensively summarizing everything that we have discussed today. In fact, it was one of the most enlightening sessions that I have come across, where we got experts talking about experience, and we have researchers, one of them who has already completed her PhD, one who has just started pursuing her PhD. So the mix was actually very, very great. And I would like to thank NIDM for giving us this opportunity to collaborate with them and take this discussion onto the national platform, where so many people who are joined us today are going to benefit it. In fact, from CRRP, what we are planning to do is that we will take this webinar and cut the videos of every speaker into short ones and then circulate it. So anyone who is interested to understand about the process of how do one go about searching for a PhD can look into Saran's video only. And someone who is interested in knowing about how does one fit their caliber in a government system can look into Sumit's video. So we are also planning to do it, and this would not have been possible without NIDM's collaboration, Dr. Agrawal's extended support to us, and of course your blessings, sir. Finally, I would like to hand it over to Rupa, if she can just thank everyone, every speaker on behalf of NIDM and CRRP, and then we can wrap it up. Over to you, Rupa. Thank you.
Yeah, just only one thing I would like to add.
Sure.
Before Rupa speak. I know some one Indian that who just now Ripple has mentioned, no, you will separate each and every video. Now there is a technique and tool available, like Wikipedia, or all texts are searchable. So one student did research, Indian but in France, that he has made all the video now searchable. So, so that searchable video, you know, they are just you search like, okay, this is the entire text is entire say more than 2 hours now, 2.5 an hour. So if someone wants to search only what Sharan said, just in that video content, I will take it up to update it so that you can make your video searchable one.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your advice.
In that case, you don't have to separate it. Like we make hashtag and everything. No, we make so many hashtags and everything. So we can go to particular that area, that person. So now that kind of things has come up in the searchable video also. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Over to you, Rupa.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Ghosh, sir. So on behalf of NIDM and CRP India, I would like to thank Professor Chandan Ghosh for his valuable time today and his views. And I would like to thank Mr. Aslam Parvez for highlighting the need of empowerment and ideal mentorship in for the youth in disaster risk management. I would like to thank our 4 speakers, starting with Mr. Animesh Prakash, who shared his first-hand experience on the field in disaster risk management, and Mr. Sumit Patel, who shared the ideas or challenges of the institutional structure and actors involved in building the gap between research and policy. Next, I would like to thank our 2 young speakers, Sangeetha and Saran, for sharing their experiences on their PhD and how their motivation behind joining this PhD, and explaining how a young researcher today or master students today can start their PhD in the disaster risk management field in India as well as abroad. I would also like to thank Dr. Garima Agrawal for supporting us throughout the whole webinar series in these 2 days, not only in front of the camera, but behind the camera also, constantly messaging, yeah, we have to do this and that. And I would also like to thank Sushmita Paul, who is the technical person behind this organizing.
She's a young professional.
She's a young professional, sorry, young professional, and she is behind the whole WebEx organization. And I would sincerely give thanks to NIDM for this great opportunity to CRP, to young professionals like us, to come together and organize this webinar. We do look forward to having more collaborations in terms of webinars, in terms of working together for disaster management in India. And in the end, I would like to encourage young professionals who are participating here to come and join us in CRP India. You can visit our website, crpindia.org. And in case you have any questions for us, for NIDM, please do get back to us. We would be happy to answer all your questions. Thank you so much, and have a nice day. It's lunchtime for you. Great.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.